ultimately formless. Formless consciousness itself. So, in which concepts can be used, but in which you have transcended all mental forms. And that is not difficult. It basically means, although he never quite says it like that, I believe, is to transcend thought. And you can transcend thought at this very moment. And realize you're still fully here, even though you're not thinking or remembering who you are. So you let go of that, and you are simply the presence. And Master Eckhart would say that is divine presence. And Master Eckhart would say that is the birth of God into this world. Sometimes he calls it the birth of the sun. The birth of God into this world is when the formless dimension suddenly appears through you, the light of consciousness. And that's, Master Eckhart said, is what the universe wants. It is striving towards that, the birth of God into this dimension. And so he says, nature's intent, by nature he means basically the universe, not just nature. Nature's intent is neither food, nor drink, nor clothing, nor comfort, nor anything else from which God is left out. Whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, secretly nature seeks and hunts and tries to ferret out the track in which God may be found. Something within this universe that is the evolutionary impulse of the universe, it all points to that birth of the transcendent dimension into this world through you. He uses another analogy here, the next one. He often says that. He says God is a seed in us. In other words, it's a potential in every human being, but it's in most humans an unfulfilled potential, giving birth to that consciousness, the consciousness of the One, the unconditioned. The seed of God is in us. Given an intelligent and hard-working farmer, it will thrive and grow up to God, whose seed it is, and accordingly its fruits will be God nature. Pear seeds grow into pear trees, nut seeds into nut trees, and God seed into God. Now let's see If we can shed some more light on this. Oh, let's take a little break, and not a break as such. He recommends some practices, so to speak, not separate from everyday life and everyday living, to enable you to transcend the usual state of consciousness and go deeper. And here's one, it's very, very simple practice, and you may recognize it from another teaching. This sermon or talk of instruction is called How We Can Appropriately Enjoy Good Food, Fine Clothes and Cheerful Company as these come our way in the natural course of things. This is perhaps one of his most approachable teachings, very simple. You should not worry yourself about food or clothing, feeling that these things are too good for you, but train your mind and the ground of your being to be above them. Nothing should rouse your mind to love and delight but God alone. It should be above all other things. It would be a sickly form of inwardness which needed to be put right by external clothing. Rather, as long as it is under your control, what is inside should correct what is outside. And if the latter, the outside, comes to you in a different form, then you should accept it as being good from the ground of your being, but in such a way that you would accept it just as willingly if it were different again. It is just the same with the food, the friends and the relatives, and with everything that God may give you or take from you. And so, in my view, the most important thing of all is that we should give ourselves up entirely to God whenever He allows anything to befall us, whether insult, tribulation, or any other kind of suffering, accepting it with joy and gratitude, and allowing God to guide us all the more, rather than seeking these things out ourselves. Willingly learn all things from God, therefore, and follow Him, and all will be well with you. Then we will be able to accept honor and comfort, and if dishonor and discomfort were to be our lot, we could and would be just as willing to endure these too. So they can justifiably feast who would just as willingly fast. You may recognize this teaching, which can be expressed in a different way as accept what is. Live in alignment with whatever form this moment takes, rather than demanding that this should be different. So he says here, people who see themselves as spiritual, they might say, oh, I mustn't be wearing these clothes, or I mustn't be in this company of these wealthy people, or have this good meal, I should be having that. Or when they're having a frugal meal, they say, oh, I wish I had something nice to eat. No, it says, whatever it is that appears, say yes to it. That's the teaching, and that is already a way of not emphasizing or de-emphasizing your form identity, your identification with form. Because whenever you say that this should not be or demand something else, in other words, you have an argument with the present moment, with what is, you're against what is, you're not one with what is, with life, then every time this happens, the false sense of self, the self, Master Eckhart calls it the self, gets strengthened. In other words, the illusion ultimately of who you are gets strengthened. So he shows us the spiritual practice is to be fine with whatever arises, to be one with it. And that de-emphasizes your form, and it begins to awaken the formless in you. The ego or the self does not like this, as you know, from your own experience perhaps, hopefully from your own experience, as you also know from observing other people. The ego gets stronger when it can resist things and complain. As the Course in Miracles says, the ego gets strengthened in strife, and it loves strife. And so you accept whatever arises. And here Master Eckhart has this wonderful, become quite one of his famous statements. If the only prayer you said in your whole life was thank you, that would suffice. If you never said any other prayer but thank you, that would be enough. And so, he says, if a good meal comes, you say thank you. If you only have a few beans and a carrot, say thank you. If you have poor clothes, you still have clothes, say thank you. Nice clothes, thank you. You're not dependent on your nice clothes, or you're not dependent on a good meal. It's by accepting whatever arises, you also transcend what arises. And more you find what referred to a little earlier, the still center, the innermost core, the hinge. So that's pretty simple. and then practicing it every moment.